I wanted to do a bit of a follow-up to my Quest for Fire video. If you haven't seen it, it might be worth looking at it. The movie Quest for Fire that came from a book from 1919. Great movie, and I'll review it or commentate on it on another video. But what I really wanted to talk about was the link between the creation, I guess not invention, not discovery of fire, but creation of fire, and what that means or how that affected the human imagination. I guess fire must have been, if not the first, probably the greatest creation, discovery in a way, but I stick with this word creation, the greatest creation that humanity ever came up with. They say that, I don't know, maybe 4 million, 3 million years ago, our distant ancestors were managing to make stone tools. Now these stone tools, motorbike alert there, I'm talking over both motorbikes, people, some drilling, and a few dogs, so please excuse me. So they say our distant ancestors that were not fully human in the sense that we understand it, that they were cracking stones to make them sharp implements for use as tools. And I guess this takes a bit of a conceptual ability, but then chimpanzees strip the branches off of bigger branches to use like fishing rods to poke down termite holes. Are they conceptualizing what they're doing, or is it a kind of instinct? Those early stone tools were very, very simple. They're probably just thrown against another stone to produce some kind of a cutting edge. Oh, that's a nice motorbike there. Whoa! Yeah, get your mufflers out, mate. Get your mufflers sorted. Anyway, where was I? Yeah, so these early stone tools were not up to much. And I guess that the people, if we can call them people, these early humans, early humanoids, I guess we could say, did not have fire, did not have the ability to make fire or even use fire. I would say these early hominids, these Australopithecines, I guess we could call them, their scientific name, might have still been living in trees, a bit like the chimpanzees do, away from predators. I guess a lot of predators, like some snakes and leopards, could climb trees, but when they get near chimpanzees today, there's a hell of a hullabaloo goes on. A lot of screaming and shouting and throwing sticks and all kinds of stuff to drive these predators away. But by the time humans really started walking all the time on two legs, bipedalism, and came down from the trees, they would have needed some kind of safety. How can you live on the plains? How can you live in the jungle, just on the ground? No cover, no shelter, no fire. Stone tools at this time, and we're talking Homo Erectus now, who was much more of a human looking creature with a bigger brain, still half the size of ours, but had a body not that far different from ours. How could these people have lived without fire, without shelter, without protection? Okay, maybe they lived in caves, but a lot of places where they lived, they didn't have caves. So my guess is they must have been able to build some kind of shelter. Maybe made some kind of barricade around their campsites to keep out wild animals. And if they could do that, then they were really conceptualizing. Their stone tools became much more sophisticated and were called hand axes. And you know, some of these hand axes have been found that are so big that they wouldn't have been used for any practical purpose at all. So maybe there was some kind of symbolic thinking going on. And I reckon all of this development of Homo erectus came down to the use of fire. Now I guess people, remote ancestors, would have seen fire, natural wildfires that would occur during dry times. They would have seen and smelt the smoke. They would have felt the heat. The smoke would have been off-putting, but the heat, they must have sensed something about the heat. What is the heat? Heat is warmth. Heat is comfort in many ways. If it gets too hot, no, but what else is hot like that? What else puts out warmth? What gives us comfort? The sun. So maybe at some stage fire and the sun became linked. And what if humans then stole some of that fire from the edge of a burning thicket or whatever it was? Would they, like Quest for Fire, have had to steal fire and keep it going? Or would fire have been created by the accidental banging of stones together? I mean, people were making hand axes from flint, and flint is used and still used today as a great, should I call it, an igniter. You rub a stone against flint and you can get sparks. And if these people were sitting around flint napping all the time, they would have created sparks. And they might have been able to put it together that sparks mean fire. Fire means warmth. Fire means comfort. And later, fire means cooking. And we know from the teeth of our early ancestors how the teeth became smaller and softer. I don't know about softer, but smaller. And this tells that maybe we were not having to process raw meat, but cooked meat. So I imagine these people sitting around some kind of shelter, some kind of primitive hut, and they've got a fire going in the middle which keeps away the wild animals. It's security too, isn't it? Fire is security. Animals hate fire. Would we have been repelled by fire in the beginning? Are chimpanzees repelled by fire and other apes? I don't know if they are or they're not. Maybe they are. But at some point our conceptual ability made us comfortable with fire. And I imagine the people sitting around that fire in the night time, lighting up the sky, cooking their food, keeping warm. And what happens then? I think fire, if anyone's had a real fireplace or just made a bonfire, it's incredibly hypnotic, isn't it? The way the flames dance and the way we are kind of compelled to stare at the fire and look into it. And I think from that, people maybe had a spur to their imagination. That fire spurred the human imagination on, and the people sitting around those fires 1,000,000 years ago, maybe 2,000,000 years ago, felt themselves, I use the word compelled again, to start telling stories. And I think that fire then opened up the human imagination. In more modern times, with the invention of the television, did it not replace the central hearth that people had had for all those millions of years? The TV replaced the fire. By the time TV comes in, the fireplace is going out. I still remember when my grandparents had a real fireplace, and I used to sit there as a 3, 4, 5-year-old and stare at the flames in that fire and really felt its hypnotic influence on me. But later, in the flat where I grew up, all we had was a gas fire, one of those old gas fires, and it had these two little spinning discs underneath the main fire, and some kind of plasticky kind of logs, and these spinning discs had little light bulbs, red light bulbs underneath them, and it would create this kind of glowing effect. But it was fake, and it was nothing like a real fire. And then we just would stare at the television, and the television would replace the fire, but it would replace it with the stories that the television wanted to tell us. It wasn't really spurring our imagination on, was it? It was giving us somebody else's imagination, giving us pictures for us to look at and process, but not creating our own pictures. And that's really all I wanted to say about this as a follow-up to my Quest for Fire video. How fire created the human imagination. Well, thanks for listening, thanks for watching. Sorry about the motorbikes again, it's all part of the atmosphere, I guess. And I'll see you about.